What's going on, everybody? Chaseontwowheels here for the Harley Davidson Sportster S review. I've had some time to think about my press launch experience. I've come back to Atlanta, Georgia. I'm wearing my Sportster S t-shirt that's only available if you did the press launch. And I think I'm ready to talk about what I thought about the Harley Davidson Sportster S because it's the first Harley I actually give a shit about. Hot take.
Strong.
I say that not being offensive to Harley, but just being honest, because I honestly think the Sportster S, as a guy who has been riding naked bikes, super sports, and sport bikes his entire riding time, I think that Harley is finally going down a path that guys like me are actually going to be interested in. So, guys, today we're going to do the review of the Sportster S. I'm going to tell you guys what I think about it coming from someone that rides sport bikes, sport, super sports, nakeds, all the sporty stuff. So I'm not the typical demographic. Let's get into the review. Alright guys, let's start this review with the core of the motorcycle, which is the Revolution Max 1250T engine. Most of you guys watching this review are already going to know Harley Davidson debuted this brand new engine with their Pan America, which is their adventure bike. They are putting a similar model engine with their Sportster S. It is the 1250T, and the T has been slightly modified for low down and mid-range torque, and my goodness gracious, this thing has handfuls of it, nay, buckets full of it. I remember riding the bike in the downtown setting. We had already gone through all the mountains. I was trying to get in front of a car, blip the throttle to get in front, and y'all, I about fell off the bike. I don't know if I was recording. I hope I was, and if I was, we'll put it in here, but if this bike didn't have modes, it would almost be hard to ride. It has that much torque going on, and did a little highway pass situation, and let's just say that it didn't take too long to get to 113 miles an hour on accident. Regardless, guys, after spending about 9 hours on this Sportster S, I was a huge fan of this Revolution Max engine. I'm actually more excited now, having ridden it, for other bikes that I hope Harley makes with that engine. That engine has most certainly gotten my attention, and while we're in the engine area, the Sportster S does have a 6-speed transmission. I know a lot of cruisers, from what I'm told, have a 5-speed. This one is a 6-speed, so it's even more towards my sporty side, because it's called the Sportster S. Sport being the key word. Alright guys, so next up let's talk about this RDRS system, which is the rider modes and all of the technology package that this Sportster S has. This bike is coming in stacked with technology. So modes wise, you have S mode, which is their sport mode, you have a street mode, you have a rain mode, and then you have 2 customizable modes that are user defined. You can make those modes whatever you want. As somebody that is coming into motorcycling liking the tech side of things, when I saw the amount of modes I had and the amount of customization I had between cornering ABS, traction control, cornering traction control, I need traction control for my mouth, and I don't have it because I don't have the RDRS system. I love the technology package that the Sportster S comes in. I was honestly shocked that a cruiser bike would come with that level of stuff. Granted, I don't really know a lot of cruiser bikes, but for me, that had all the technology I could absolutely want in a motorcycle. Now guys, through that 9-hour day of riding, I never found myself in a position where I was in a corner and I felt any slipping and I needed that cornering traction control. That stuff's not there for the everyday use. It's for those exaggerated circumstances where you're in an emergency situation and the bike can save you. It was really comfortable knowing that I had all of that rider aids backing me up just in case I got into a sketchy situation. Moving on from the rider modes, the Sportster S also has a phenomenal dash. I think the information is laid out really well. It's got a lot of stuff you can do inside of the dash, and the good thing is Harley has done a really good job of laying out the user interface to where you can figure it out yourself. A lot of these bikes that have a lot of different modes and a lot of settings you can change, sometimes it's hard to figure out all of those settings. And if you can't figure out the settings, there's no point in having them. And also, the dash looks gorgeous. Like, it fits with the motorcycle. It's easy to see during the daylight. We were riding in the bright sun all day long, and I never had a problem seeing the information that I needed while looking down at the dash. Alright, so next thing, let's talk about the maneuvering of the bike and the center of gravity. As I've told you guys, I am not used to riding cruisers or Harleys. I was a little worried when I first got on the Sportster S. You know, my feet were in front of me, whether I was on the mid-control model or the forward control model, and my hands are in front of me, so I'm in this kind of like clamshell situation. I was kind of worried about the maneuverability of the bike. Harley did a phenomenal job of making the center of gravity very low. The bike's also pretty low to the ground, so I could control that bike easily. We were going in super slow traffic sometimes. I was lane splitting legally, because that was awesome. I never found myself in a position where it was hard to maneuver. I was almost shocked at how easy I could move that bike around and how quickly I became very accustomed to how the bike moves. You know, I was very comfortable in probably 5 minutes on the bike, and that's somebody that doesn't have any cruiser experience at all. I thought that was really impressive. I think it's important enough to make it its own little point. Sport mode on this bike is dumb. It's not a sport style motorcycle. I guess it's a sporty cruiser. But coming from an actual sport side of motorcycling, I had super low expectations for this thing. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Look at some of the clips of us going through the canyons in LA with this cruiser. So I think at this point that footage says enough for itself. I would have never expected to be able to ride that aggressively on a cruiser style motorcycle. That mixed with that low torquey engine in S mode, bro, even if you are just cruising around, you are going to have a really good time. And if you get that little pep in your step and you need to, you know, scrape some pegs or something, this bike is going to be totally okay with that. I was shocked at how much sporty riding I could do on a cruiser from Harley Davidson. Would have never thought that. So guys, moving on to the controls of the motorcycle. Like I told you guys, the infotainment of the bike had a lot of options. If you just look at the motorcycle controls wise, there is a lot of stuff going on. Once you start riding and you realize that the majority of the right controls are literally just for media controls, it doesn't seem as daunting. I can say, like, having messed around with the controls throughout the day, I was really happy with the fit and feel of all the buttons, except for the turn signals. From what I'm told, this was one of the first times Harley has used turn signals on only one side. Supposedly, turn signals are on both sides, which sounds crazy to me because I've literally never ridden a bike like that. I found out throughout the day, like, you know, using my turn signals, there was a lack of a tactile feel with the turn signal specifically. With bike reviews, this is something I notice a lot. Like, some companies do a really good job. When I hit the button, I know I've hit the button. I didn't really get that, but with just the turn signals. It was very strange. All the other controls felt totally fine. So, not super happy with the turn signal. So, Harley, on the next one that you have the controls together, let's get a more tactile feel on there. I would appreciate it coming from the sportier side of the two-wheeled family. Alright guys, so next up, let's talk about the seat on the Sportster S. Now, like I told you guys, we were up at 6 and we got back at 4 o'clock or something like that in the afternoon. We spent 9 hours riding this thing. Honestly, if you're only riding between 5 and 6 hours, I don't think the seat is bad. For 9 hours of riding all freaking day, by the end of the day, my butt was not feeling great. The seat, the stock seat that it comes with, is a little tiny, and I had a problem myself trying to move my butt around. The seat is one of those seats where, like, you have to sit in a specific spot and it doesn't really feel comfortable to kind of move around, because, you know, if you're riding for a long period of time, you know, just getting a little shimmy left or right will sometimes help you. Now, the cool thing is, Harley is from the get-go launching a comfort style seat that they have. I think this is one of the absolute mods you need to get for the Sportster S if you're planning on doing much longer rider days. If you're looking at something like 8 to 9 hours, or maybe you're gonna go on a super long trip, if you're one of these guys that rides a ton at a time, definitely consider upgrading that seat just so you can have a little more maneuverability while riding the bicycle or motorcycle. It's not a bicycle. I literally just said it's a bicycle. That's hilarious. I'm not saying that again, so Bo has to use this. Next up, let's talk about the controls of the motorcycle, specifically the foot controls. As you guys probably know at this point if you're watching reviews on Sportster S's, the bike comes with forward controls. So your feet are much farther forward than they typically are if you're somebody like me, where I'm used to rear sets. Just like the seat, from stock, Harley is releasing a mid-control unit. It cost $800. Personally, after riding this motorcycle all day, the mid-control model is where it needs to be. This is a sporty style motorcycle, and the mid-controls accentuate the sportiness of it. I feel like Harley super dropped the ball with not having mid-controls as stock controls, and then you can get the optional forward controls. If the whole ethos around this motorcycle is to get riders like me who typically ride sporty motorcycles and you want them to feed into your line, why would you not default this sporty motorcycle with mid controls so guys like us, guys like me that are getting on this motorcycle want and feel sportier? That's going to be that entry point. You're going to get them at the Sportster S, and then they're going to like that motorcycle and then start looking at what else you guys have because they're going to enjoy riding it in a sporty way. Something I have to note, the lean angle, the max lean that you can get out of this motorcycle actually does not change if you have the forward controls or the mid controls, which is kind of crazy. You would think if it had mid controls, you could lean it more, but it leans max the exact same. So it's not even about, you know, you can go faster with mid controls, but with mid controls, it makes me have an easier time of positioning my weight side to side on the motorcycle, which is only really going to be important when you're trying to carry more speed through a turn. Another note with the forward controls that I found, one, I found it a little hard to shift. The shifter was a little high when using the forward controls. It wasn't a huge deal throughout the day, but I just noticed when I had those mid controls, my foot could shift much easier. This is one of those things where I'm not a cruiser guy, so I don't know if this was just my inexperience with this style of motorcycle. I found it hard, especially on the highway where, you know, you're not shifting, you're just in a gear, you've got cruise control on, you're chilling. I had a hard time finding where I wanted to position my feet with the forward controls. If I had mid controls, I would have put the ball of my foot on the peg and felt fine. Like I said, that could be the lack of my experience with this style of motorcycle, but I never found that comfortable place to ride with the forward controls. My feet were moving around the whole freaking day that we were on this thing. Alright guys, so let's move back up to the handlebar. Throughout the day, you know, like I told you guys, we were, you know, it's a handlebar situation. Your arms are kind of up and together. I felt like this was great for maneuvering the motorcycle, but I did notice that there was a little bit of shaking in the handlebars. I don't think this was like crazy abnormal or anything like that. It is something that I wanted to note. If you guys are familiar with the Harley brand, like, I don't know if shaking is normal or not. There was just a little bit more shaking than I would have expected while riding the bike around. Let's move on to what I would probably categorize as the worst part, or the worst issue that the Sportster S has, and that is the amount of travel the rear suspension has. I have been told that LA streets are pretty terrible. Let me let you guys listen to a clip from our press launch video. I want you guys to listen to my voice. I'm talking normally, I'm just talking, you know, through what I'm experiencing. You can literally hear my voice shaking while I'm riding the motorcycle. The turn signal, I can't feel anything I press on it. I feel like it could be much better than it is. I want like a tactile feel on it. So as you guys can see, there's a good bit of shaking going on. I can still remember the one bump that I hit that I could feel from my butt all the way to my head. It was when we were on the highway and this happened. I'm trying to think of, oh my god, my whole back is dead now. Holy fuck. I can still feel the pain. Like, for one, I have a bad back, so when my bad back with that low amount of suspension travel hit that bump on the highway, and I was just like, I don't know if this was a adjustability issue. I don't know. I didn't hear anybody else really complaining about the rear suspension. So the models I was riding might have just not been adjusted for me. I would really want to comment on the suspension if I was able to get one in the shop, get the suspension adjusted specifically for my weight and the way I wanted to ride it, and then judge it. But based on the models I rode while I was out there, that rear suspension was not the move. I didn't really see much of an issue up in the mountains when we were riding, or in the canyons, but it was only when the road conditions were bad that I could really notice it. If you live in a town with a lot of bumpy roads and you're thinking about a Sportster S, might want to do a little test ride, do some suspension adjustments, and then see if you can get it dialed in for you, because that's super important. Alright guys, so next up let's talk about the brakes, because as many of you guys have probably seen, the Sportster S only has one front rotor. Now granted, what Harley did was put a Brembo brake on that thing, so you've got a top class level brake going on with that front rotor, but it's only got one rotor and it is a bit heavier of a motorcycle. I can happily tell you guys throughout the day, you know, we were doing some pretty aggressive riding and I made sure to get on the brakes a few times. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you guys that the brakes are phenomenal. I don't think anybody's expecting that. I never got myself into a situation where I found myself needing more brakes. And I was riding sporty. You guys can see how I was riding this bike throughout the entire day. I never got to a position, if you were in maybe an emergency braking situation, maybe? I didn't have a problem with the brakes at all. I know for a fact Harley put the one rotor on as a design choice. If it was me, if I could modify this motorcycle, I'd probably put two rotors on there just to have that added braking ability. It's not unsafe or anything like that. Harley has thought about what they're doing. They put a Brembo brake up there, which is something out of the sport bikes that I'm used to, so I'm very familiar with hearing the word Brembo, and the braking felt good. I never, I could, one finger the brake, never had a problem. It would just progressively brake. There was no real bitiness at any time. So I was pretty happy with the brakes throughout the entire day. So guys, the last thing I'll really touch on is the fit and finish of the Sportster S. Before I went out to do the press launch, saw a lot of photos, saw a lot of videos that Harley had filmed. You never know how a bike is going to translate to when you see it in person. I can happily say, when I saw this bike in person, I got, if anything, more excited about it when I was able to sit there, touch it, feel it, see how all the lines work. I think design-wise, Harley did a phenomenal job with this bike. And yeah, it is a higher priced motorcycle. This thing's 15 grand. It is not cheap at all. The way I look at the Sportster S is I'm comparing it to something like a Ducati Diavel. I don't think many people compare that, but I'm coming from a sport side and I'm looking at this like a sport cruiser. The Diavel, which is arguably a more sporty cruiser for sure, there's no doubt about that, but the Diavel's like 18 grand. This Harley Davidson motorcycle is 15 grand. You get the entire electronic suite, you get all these rider aids, you get a beautiful TFT dash, you get a very fun riding motorcycle. I mean, it's a vibe for sure. Wouldn't expect myself to say this, but I honestly think 15 grand is a totally understandable price for the quality of motorcycle that you're gonna get with the Sportster S. And that's the first Harley I've ever ridden. I am honestly really surprised, really impressed with the direction Harley is going. Never thought I would be saying this. I still don't like their dealerships. Let me be clear. Just because I go to a press launch and enjoy one of the bikes Harley has made, I still think they have a lot of work to do with this mentality that their dealerships have. We'll get into that in another video. As far as the Sportster S goes, coming from a guy that rides sporty, very impressed, very much intrigued with the direction Harley has kind of pivoted themselves, and I really can't wait to see what else they got coming down the road. And guys, that's all I've got for the review of the Harley Davidson Sportster S. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully it helped you out a little if you guys are looking into if this is the right bike for you. If you did enjoy this video or learned something, make sure to hit that like button, and if you enjoy motorcycle content, we make a ton of it here on the channel, so make sure to subscribe for more content coming at you real soon. If you guys are still watching this video, that means you're in the outro crew. You've made it to the very end. If you guys notice in the comments, you're gonna see a lot of people put OC in their comment. That's the outro crew. All that lets us know is you guys got to the end of the video, and we massively appreciate it. Guys in the outro crew, make a comment down below, put OC in your comment, and let me know, do you guys consider the Sportster S in competition with stuff like the Diavel? Or am I just a psychopath that is standing in front of a camera talking to himself? Can't wait to see your comments down below, guys. Thank you so much for getting to the end of the video, and I will see you on the next one. Later. Cornering chat control. Malfunction.